All right, we're going to move on to political parties. This is where things start to get a little interesting now in the unit. So political parties are groups of individuals with similar ideas about politics, and they're organized to acquire and exercise political power, of course. And they are there to promote their beliefs and their goals and reach certain objectives and pass certain policy. They're essential institutions to democracy. They provide a platform for politicians to campaign for office. They lead to competitive elections, and they allow populations to engage in organized politics because individuals can become a part of and support these political parties and be engaged. Civic participation is pretty important. You should have strong civic participation. You taking this course, though, is a big step. So they are found in both democratic and authoritarian regimes. While they, for the most part, can promote democracy, they can also promote authoritarianism. And we'll see how. You probably already know how. Authoritarian regimes can use them to monopolize a country's direction and limit diversity and dissent. They can have political parties, but they can have a majority political party, a dominating political party, or where there's only one party able to have power, China. And this explains the presence of one-party systems. Democratic regimes promote multi-party systems with competition. And now we're going to talk about dominant versus one-party systems. These are different, and College Board expects you to know these differences because if you use them interchangeably or incorrectly on your AP FRQs, then you can just kiss goodbye those points. It'll sail away on a paper airplane through your window in the gym that you're taking the test in. So a dominant party system is where one major party wins the governing power. And in Russia, for example, they have a dominant party system, which is dominated by United Russia, and this occurred starting in 2000. Mexico, prior to 2000, had a dominant party, the Industrial Revolutionary Party. Multiple parties are allowed to run, but one will inevitably win and hold the power, most of the power too, across the branches of government. It's, again, many will enter, one will win. And this can be found, of course, in authoritarian or democratic regimes. One-party systems are different. One-party system is where a single party has political party control in the ruling system. So they have no other parties that are allowed to exercise power. They're all outlawed, or they just do not enjoy any effective political power. In China, remember, there's 8 other parties. They're not entirely outlawed, but they don't enjoy any political power or any effective political power. And these are only found in authoritarian regimes. And China and the Communist Party maintain centralism and order. They're a great example of a one-party system. They do allow 8 other parties to exist to just broaden discussion and consulting and stuff. Iran doesn't have any official political party system, so they don't have a dominant religious party or anything. They don't have any systems to begin with in the first place. There is no party. There's no partying. Go home. In Russia, let's talk a little bit more about the rules ensuring a one-party dominance in the country. So they increase party registration requirements to make it harder for parties to run. So in 2012, they increased the number of members of a party to be 50,000 and over 40,000, which is a 25% increase. They allow only legally registered parties to run for office. So, for example, only parties that are registered with the Ministry of Justice are allowed to participate in elections at the national level. So you have to go through a lot of steps to get there. They use selective court decisions to disqualify candidates as well, so the law can get in the way of someone running for office. We're going to look at some examples. So our first example is Alexei Navalny. I believe that's how you say it. So that's him in the top right corner. He looks pretty serious. Navalny was an oppositional figure to United Russia as part of a different party. He was an anti-corruption activist, definitely opposition to United Russia. And he has faced a variety of different legal challenges that have been targeting him to disqualify him from running for office positions. So in 2013, he was convicted of embezzlement from a state-owned timber company, in a case that was widely criticized as political motivated. Everyone kind of came out and says, this was no accident. Many saw this trial and inevitable conviction as an attempt by the Russian government to sideline him, kind of get in his way, bumping off the track, and prevent him from running against and ultimately challenging Putin. Because people don't like corruption, so they're going to see this big anti-corruption activist coming in, and they're going to like it, and they didn't want people to like it. Navalny's disqualification from running in the 2018 presidential election, of course he got disqualified, he was convicted. It further reinforced his perception that it was a form of political political manipulation, and it was made to suppress his voice and served as a kind of a foundation that the Russian government likes and will suppress the opposition. And later on in 2021, Navalny's organizations were then labeled as extremist organizations by Russian authorities and the Russian government. And this has banned him and his allies, his supporters, from participating in elections. So you can really see here how this was really debated as a politically motivated event here. And there's a lot more to this case. This is kind of the bare minimum here. If you want to look it up, I highly encourage you to. It's very interesting. We actually have another one. This is Sergei Frugal, I think. Frugal. And he was a member of a different party, the Liberal Democratic Party of Russia, the LDPR, which is not Putin's party. Putin's party is United Russia. And he was unexpectedly elected governor of a region in 2018, defeating someone else who was kind of backed up by the Russian government. He was surprisingly elected. So it kind of caught the Russian authorities off guard a little bit. In 2020, he was arrested and charged with murder, essentially, and the linkage to multiple murders, which is not taken lightly in any country at all. But it is kind of suspicious that these murders were about 20 years prior. Many of his supporters viewed these charges as politically motivated and aimed at removing him from office. Of course, they're going to happen 2 years after he gets office. They have to build up a case to get him out of there because it was very unexpected. He was obviously removed from the governor with these charges, and he was replaced with an acting governor appointed by the Kremlin. We're going to continue talking about one-party dominance, though, because we haven't talked about it enough. Rules ensure one-party dominance in Russia, such as limiting the ability of political opposition to present their viewpoints in the media. Russia has a lot of say-so over the media. There's also been many cases of journalists just magically dying or committing suicide or jumping off hospitals. State-controlled television centers exist, and they are there to dominate the media landscape and control what people see within the country. And opposition parties really struggle to get any say-so in what's put on these channels and to access mainstream media outlets that are frequently used by the Russian people. There's also an increasing threshold rules to limit party access to the ballots. There's a lot more requirements that you need to have, such as members, to be considered a party and to be on the actual ballot. And this is kind of to weed out smaller parties or prevent those from developing. If you see a lot of rules, you're not going to want to do it. This is just a cool costume I saw here. I thought it was funny, so I put it on the PowerPoint. So threshold rules can include requiring parties to have a minimum percentage of the vote to gain seats in parliament. So yes, they can be on the ballot, but they need to gain a certain amount of seats in the legislature. Can make it difficult for smaller parties to enter the political arena and have a say-so and have a voice in policy making and the political system. And this will consolidate party among the larger, more established and prominent parties that are also backed up from the government, and it makes it harder for new challengers and opposition to emerge. Threshold for parties to enter the Duma is 5% of the national vote. And while it may not seem like that much, it actually is a ton, considering the population of Russia is pretty big. And this can be a very, very, very significant barrier for smaller parties to get it into the Duma and have any political say-so. There's other rules like eliminating gubernatorial elections. And I'm not talking about giant peanuts from the SpongeBob movie. I'm talking about governor elections. This is a term that College Board likes to use on the AP exam. Gubernational. I think it is gubernational. All right, you can say gubernatorial as well, depending on whatever you want to use. You can pick. But I like to say goober because it makes you think of goofy goobers. So by appointing governors rather than allowing them to be elected by the people, elections would be a more democratic form. The central government can ensure that regional leadership is loyal to the ruling party and follows what they want to follow. This reduces any potential for opposition parties to get any foothold in regional politics because they're not elected in, and it strengthens the control of the central government and the United Russian Party within it. In Russia, these elections were actually abolished in 2004. So, yeah, that's why we have this appointment system. And as you can see here, in 2004, that means they were under Putin. And governors are appointed, obviously, by the president with confirmation by regional legislators. All right, let's talk about Mexico now. One-party dominance. That's different from a one-party system, which is what's in China. So one-party dominance is kind of like what's happening in Russia. However, Mexico doesn't really have a one-party dominance anymore. It used to up until the year 2000. So they've been transitioning away from a one-party dominance. You remember what that dominant party was? It was the PRI, the Industrial Revolutionary Party. So they've eliminated el dedazo, which is a tradition where the sitting president handpicked his successor within the party. Not an election, not a free, fair, competitive election. And this ensured continuity of power and the continuity of a one-party dominance. He handpicked him. That's why I put the little Ubi gif here. And this facilitated a more democratic process for selecting presidential candidates, opening up the possibility for internal party competition. When we eliminate someone just picking their successor and we put in elections, obviously it's more democratic. And we're opening more competition, more opposition, more voices, more parties, more candidates, and they're going to emerge rather on merit and their ideals and popularity rather than their friendliness and family and closenesses to the actual president. It's not about who you know as much anymore. They've also decentralized and reduced one-party power at the subnational level. They've included electoral reforms that have increased the competitiveness of state municipal elections and measures to strengthen local government structures and promote citizen participation. So they're really emphasizing federalism in Mexico. That's what we're seeing here. And this is a great question that College Board can ask you on the AP exam, is about one-party power and federalism. They're really setting you up for it, and it's not something all the students really know a lot about. So I would drill this into your head that they've put in electoral reforms that increase state election competitiveness and strengthen local government structures that promote citizen participation. And citizen participation could be voting, it could be campaigning, it could be supporting candidates, using the media, being politically aware. There's all kinds of factors that contribute to citizen participation. And decentralization, allowing opposition parties to gain a foothold in state governments and municipal councils. So we're not seeing the national government have a lot of say here in our local governments. It's going to be more local citizens impacting where they live, forming a community, a political community. They've also established and strengthened the National Electoral Institute. And the whole purpose of this institute is to oversee the electoral process all the way from voter registration to electoral oversight. Nigeria, we see a multi-party system, and this is very democratic. We want such competitive elections, and it can influence representation and formal political participation by citizens. Typically, we see multi-party systems increase political participation, like we saw in Mexico there. So Nigeria's multi-party system includes about 30 registered political parties. They have two dominating strong parties, which is the People's Democratic Party and the All Progressives Congress. And they have a third party having a degree of electoral success. Not as much as the other two, though. In 2015, their president became the first president elected who was part of the APC, not the PDP. So we can see here multiple parties have hold the electoral office position, such as in Mexico. And in Russia, we haven't really seen this happen in the past 24 years. The APC has also won majorities in Nigeria's Congress after the dominant party control by the PDP. But they also have a strong influence in the legislative branch as well. The UK, obviously, we have a multiple party system. We've talked about this before. It features competition primarily to two major parties, like in Nigeria. And these parties are the Conservative and the Labour parties. And they control the legislative and thus control the executive because the Prime Minister is chosen by the majority party in the House of Commons. And this is obviously done through first-past-the-post election rules that will favor majority parties. Minor parties have some regional representation, like the Scottish National Party, and they're able to win some seats in the legislative representation, but not majority of them. So in 2015, the Scottish Nationalist Party won 56 seats in the House of Commons, which is a good amount of seats. It's a fair amount. They'll probably get a voice or two in there. And they've become the most electorally successful regional party in the House of Commons elections. Some legislators, such as the House of Commons, are highly organized by political parties, with voting based on strict party discipline that influences policy making. Some legislators, such as the House of Commons around the world, are highly organized by political parties. So you vote on policy based on what your political party supports. And we see that a lot in the United States. And it's very, very organized on strict party discipline. And the UK, for the most part, is like this as well. You will vote for a policy that your party is backing up. Now, there have been times where this really hasn't occurred. In 2013 with the legalization of same-sex marriage, and in 2019 on Brexit. These are rare occasions where party members were allowed to vote against the preferences of their party. They could really kind of do what they wanted to do, and they wouldn't face any penalties. All right, so let's talk about catch-all political parties. This is something that you may see on a question or two on the AP exam. Not that important, but you need to know it. So catch-all parties earn support from groups with different characteristics. So they will, as time goes on, change their beliefs, or they'll emphasize certain heightened issues. Their main goal is to attract popular support, and they have very ideologically diverse platforms because they want to gain as many followers as possible. And that's their main goal here: gain as many followers as possible and grow as big as they can. These parties are willing to change their minds on issues to encourage more votes, particularly when elections come around. They may have a broad spectrum of beliefs as well. They may be religiously tolerant or tolerant of certain sexual orientations and such. Like United Russia, they're often the dominant party in a dominant party system because they have such a high array of supporters from a variety of different backgrounds. And they earn wide support from different people and tends to support popular pragmatic policies over ideological policies that face significant opposition. So, for example, this presidency in Russia, the government implemented measures to modernize and diversify the economy, attract foreign direct investment, stimulate innovation through initiatives such as this innovation center. So this party, the United Russia Party, had all these measures too that can really benefit the people as a whole. If you have a strong economy, that's benefiting everyone here. And these policies were addressed to address economic challenges in the country as a whole and improve Russia's economy and competitiveness in a global market. It was a very pragmatic approach to economic development. All right, let's talk about the Chinese Communist Party because we haven't talked about it enough. In China, we have a one-party system, the Communist Party of China. It has controlled the government and military since 1949, which is still pretty recent. It's not even 100 years yet. And they have 8 minor parties that have very limited, basically no power, and they kind of fill minor political offices just to be there, just for fun, you know? Policymaking is entirely in the hands of the CCP. These 8 minor parties at the national level basically have agreed to let the CCP do what it wants to do, or the parties will be disbanded. So it's kind of a threat. These minor parties may participate in the National People's Congress. How nice. But they can't really do anything unless their participation is agreed upon by the CCP and their voice agrees with the CCP. As individual politicians prove themselves in a village or a county or a province, they gain support. They have the opportunity to move up within the CCP and have more influence on policymaking. So the more communist you are, the more power you have. The average citizen, though, has no influence. You have to climb up the ladder, and they don't elect these individuals once they... The average citizen, though, has really no influence until they start climbing up the ladder. They don't elect these individuals once they start moving up the party hierarchy because the individuals are appointed from within the CCP. So they're not elected, they're appointed. Very, very, very important that you get this in your head. All right, in Iran, there's no parties. There's a curfew. They have no political parties. It's just a big, fat, religious theocracy there. And no political party structures for the most part. They have some small little groups that are very loose. They have political alliances with not really strong linkages to constituents and people. They exist, but they don't do anything. Kind of like in China. But in Iran, they don't really acknowledge them. In 79, revolution year, they recognized the freedom of association, or the formation of parties, societies, political or professional associations, as well as religious societies. So basically political groups that unite under shared beliefs, sort of like a political party, but they're not political parties. And these groups can be Islamic or pertain to a certain other religious group like Christianity or Judaism that are minority religions. However, they cannot violate the principle of independence, freedom, national unity. They can't try to divide the country. They can't violate any Islamic law or anything that was even remotely close to violating Sharia law in the Islamic Republic. So parties and individuals are vetted by the Islamic government, similar to China. You have to agree with Islam. If you do not, you don't get really any say-so. Unless you're one of those little minor seats in the majors. But if you got those few little seats for non-Muslim people, they don't really do anything. They're kind of useless. And you have to share similar views to the supreme leader. There is no opposition. No exceptions. All right, let's talk about Mexico. So yeah, we're going to talk about the PAN, the PRD, and the PRI. I put PAN here. I put a picture of bread because PAN in Spanish is bread, a loaf of bread. That's why I put a picture of loaf there too, in case you didn't get it. So in Mexico, they have a multi-party system dominated by two parties, the National Action Party and the Party of the Democratic Revolution and the Institutional Revolutionary Party. These are our three major parties, and they are allowed to form coalitions to nominate candidates for any particular election. What's a coalition? A coalition is a group of political parties that join together to form a government. That's all it is. So the PAN National Action Party, it's backwards. PAN National Action Party, it's kind of funny. The candidate Mr. Fox won the presidency in 2000, ending 71 years of uninterrupted rule of PRI. So PAN overtook PRI after 71 years. The bread is coming in, and he served as president for 6 years, because that's the term limits. PRI candidate Enrique Nieto won the presidency in 2012. He was a PRI candidate, and he served as president for 6 years up until 2018. The Morena, not the PRD candidate, Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador, or you can abbreviate to AMLO, won the presidency in 2018 and has served since. We've seen three different parties win the presidential election in Mexico since 2000. And that's a great sign of multi-party systems and democratization. And Morena candidates have since held majority seats in both the legislative chambers as well. And the PRI PAN have as well. But not since 2018. 2018 has been a Morena rule, essentially. But now it is 2024. It is election year. So we'll see how that goes with the presidency. So let's talk about bread some more. The PAN. So their ideologies are center-right, and in the United States that's more conservative-based. They're founded in 1939, and they're traditionally representative of these conservative interests. They're historically associated with free market economic policies and Catholic social values because a high portion of Mexico's citizens are Catholic. They emerged as a major political force in the political system in the 80s. That's when they really got their foothold. And they won the presidency in 2000, ending that 71-year rule of the PRI. They have a very strong foothold in the northern urbanized regions of Mexico, particularly among the business interests and the urban middle class, because the north is where the big cities are. That's where the big services and manufacturing economic systems are located. So they're really getting that middle class and the business workers and the employers. So we can see here, this is actually the 2018 election. I should have done it 2000, but this is 2018. So we can see here that Morena has a foothold right now in the political system. And then the PAN, the National Action Party, it got 2 states in that election. But there's a very clear winner here. Let's talk about the PRI, though, because they didn't really get anything in the last election. So they're center to center right, kind of like the PAN, a little more left-leaning than PAN. They were founded in 1929, and they were a dominant political force for 71 years, for the majority of the 20th century. And they practiced corporatism and state intervention in the economy, which is different from the National Action Party, because as we've discussed, the National Action Party promotes more free market ideals. They are traditionally characterized by authoritarian and clientelist practices, maintaining power through a network of individuals, a network of patronage. They underwent a significant transformation, though, in the late 20th century, and embracing democratic reforms, and they lost the presidency in 2000. And they have since sought to modernize its image, kind of go through a transformation, rehabilitate itself, as you would. It's gone through rehab to change its political landscape and retain influence in various regions, but especially in the rural areas. Remember, the National Action Party has a foothold in the urban areas, and the PRI wants a foothold in the rural areas. Look at that. And then finally, the PRD party. They are center-left to left-wing. They were formed more recently in 1989. They were a merger of smaller parties that kind of mixed together, and they were all kind of left-leaning individual groups. They were originally a more socialist and a populist party, advocating for more social justice, reforms, redistribution of wealth, and human rights. They have faced internal divisions, though. I mean, if you have so many different groups coming together, you're going to have divisions, particularly over who actually is controlling and who has the power and the leadership and the strategy. They have a stronger presence in Mexico City as well as some of the southern states. So they're diffused throughout the country just a little bit. And they have some say-so in marginalized communities as well that want that redistribution of wealth. So about Nigeria a little bit. And the reason I didn't go over the Morena Party, in case you're wondering, is because the College Board doesn't really have anything for you to learn about it. So I'm not going to waste your time on it because it's so recent that they're not going to test you on it. So in Nigeria, there's multiple parties, as we discussed, and there's ethnic quotas. Yes, there's ethnic quotas that affect representation in the federal legislature. So the Constitution provides for political parties that is backed up by the Constitution, and they have the Independent National Election Committee that has the power to oversee elections and political parties. So in the 2019 election, we had 91 political parties. Many with inclusive quotas to ensure the voice of minority groups, because we have so many different ethnic groups. We have hundreds of ethnic groups in Nigeria throughout the 36 states. And this led to numerous complaints from Nigerian voters from the ballot, because the ballot was just too long. There's Squidward, I'm Squidward. Is there any other Squidwards that they need to know about? Any other candidates? No, there's 71 candidates that ran for the election. Just too many to pick from. It would very much discourage me from voting. So the International Elections Committee... The International Elections Committee announced the deregistration of 74 out of the 92 registered parties. This came out. There was another party added on after that. That's why the map doesn't add up. Not that important, though. In order to streamline the electoral process, make it more efficient, and to get rid of these complaints. I mean, 71 candidates is a lot. And this removed a variety of parties and voices, essentially, as the average citizen had fewer parties to represent them. No one can run for election in Nigeria unless they are a part of a political party, though. And parties are required that those candidates pay for inclusion. So if you're too poor, you can't run. And this means that only the wealthiest of individuals can run. And it prohibits the average Nigerian from running for political office, because the average Nigerian is not wealthy. So let's look at these major parties. So let's start with the APC, the All Progressives Congress. They are center-right ideologically. They were formed very recently in 2013 from a merger. And they are currently the ruling party in Nigeria. They won the presidential election in 2015. And they advocate for anti-corruption, economic reforms, and national security. Those are their main focuses. Then we had the People's Democratic Party. It was founded in 1998, so it's a little older, and it was the ruling party for 16 years. It's more center-left, Democratic Party. Democratic parties are more center-left, and they focus on social welfare programs, economic development, and political stability. They historically been a broad-based party, though, kind of like a catch-all party with support from various regions and ethnic groups in Nigeria. So it very much could fit the definition of a catch-all party. Now, something else I want to focus on, I got a cool little laser pointer to show you so you know what I'm talking about. This focus here, obviously the other party wants political stability and economic development. So don't really learn, not learn, but kind of learn about the focuses of the parties. But don't rely on learning these three things as a focus here, because it goes way much more in depth than what I'm discussing with you. This is a very, very broad way to describe the parties. So if you want to learn more, go look it up. Go watch some videos. You certainly can, unlike for a lot of other countries. And they lost power in 2015 from the APC, but they remain a huge political force, and they have been in opposition to the APC-led government, kind of a check on that system a little bit. So this is the election results in 2019. It was kind of split here, which is very interesting. We see that the APC dominates the north, which is actually more Muslim oriented, while the PDP dominates the South, which is more Christian oriented. But it's also the PDP, the People's Democratic Party, are located near the oil reserves in the Niger River Delta. And we talk about how economic development was a big focus of the PDP. It's probably because they have all that oil and where their voters are. So that's why. Let's look at Russia. They have one party. I bet you can guess what it is. I bet you can take a great guess of what this party is that's been dominating recent elections for 20-something years. It's diminished representation of smaller parties because of changing threshold rules. They've eliminated and reinstated single-member districts that don't really promote regional parties or don't promote multiple parties in the system as well. It's really focusing on a single party, a single candidate as a result. And the reintroduction of this single-member districts has provided a pathway for independent candidates to run and potentially win seats, though. So that is something to think about. In these districts, candidates can campaign based on their individual merits and connections to the local community. So, yes, single-member districts promote one winner and single parties, but if you have a single district that kind of encompasses a community, you can get candidates to win from certain communities and represent community interests. So that's just something to keep in mind. And they're not really focusing on party affiliation. However, there are 48 registered parties in Russia, but only 6 of them are represented in the Duma. And United Russia is obviously the dominating one. And there's only one with a majority of the seats. 340 out of 450 seats. And yeah. So we can see here the Communist Party. Why is the Communist Party at 57 seats? Remember, the Soviet Union was communist. So there's still some little crust and crumbs here in the Duma. But for the most part, United Russia, yeah, it does dominate the Duma a little bit. We got some other parties, though, like Just Russia and New People and the Liberal Democratic Party as well. Next slide. So this is just more election results instead of the legislature. This is the executive. And we see here Putin. Wow, he has a very strong foothold in the executive election here. And you notice how they called him an independent instead of part of the United Russia Party? That's kind of funny. So yeah. All right, let's move on to the United Kingdom. So they have single-member districts with plurality elections that diminish minor party representation. It favors larger, well-established parties that leads to a winner-takes-all outcome, kind of like a poker game a little bit, if you got all those aces. And the winning party will gain the representation for that district, and they'll earn the most seats in the House of Commons. Minor parties really struggle, especially if they're dispersed over the country, and they don't win as many seats. Or enough votes for any seats. Well, I guess it's the same thing. Single-member districts allow regional parties, though, to win legislative seats, such as the Scottish National Party. Look at that SpongeBob seat. That's pretty cool. So, I guess what I'm trying to say to you is that smaller minority parties that are not regionally based struggle in single-member districts. We saw this in Russia as well. Regional-based parties that are based on a region like Scotland or Wales or a local community are the ones that are winning seats. If that clears anything up for you. Regional parties typically have more concentrated support, and that's why they have a lot more voters concentrated in one area. Their home, where they come to play with their toys. And they can actually benefit from the first past the post systems, focusing their resources on winning seats in those regions. In areas where a regional party has strong support, it's able to win a plurality of the votes, enabling it to secure representation in the legislature in the form of seats. So we have the Labour Party and we have the Conservative Party for the most part. The Labour Party is center-left to left-wing. It was founded in 1900, so it's kind of old, and it emerged from labor and socialist movements, especially those that arise as a result of the Industrial Revolution. Their core principles include social justice, equality, workers' rights, and the economy. They traditionally advocated for state intervention in the economy over free market systems, and this was to address social inequalities. Throughout its history, the Labour Party has implemented significant social reforms in the country, such as the establishment of a national healthcare system and the welfare systems after World War II. The support base has included industrial workers, trade unions, and progressive intellectuals, the people who are committing to the labor in the economy. But it's also broadened its appeal to include a wider range of voters. They want to be more of a catch-all party because I get some more votes and more power. And this particularly is in the urban and ethnic minority communities. I think Harold Wilson here kind of looks like George Clooney, and that's why I put those two pictures there for you. So yeah, he was a prime minister. They've had multiple notable prime ministers though. So yeah, and that means they've had multiple instances where they are the majority party in the House of Commons. Put those connections together. So about the Conservative Party. So it's a center right to right wing. It was founded in the early 19th century, and it is the oldest political party in the United Kingdom. So very interesting. Its core principal values include individual liberty, free market capitalism, and traditionalist values and approaches. They advocate for more limited government over government intervention in particularly the economy, and they prioritize fiscal, which is just economic responsibility. And this fiscal responsibility refers to government spending. So they refer to safe government spending and smart government spending that won't put them in any deficits or debt or ruin the economy for the country as a whole. They're traditionally associated with interests of the upper class, the business community, and rural landowners. So the Labour Party is more urban and focused on the laborers. We're looking at the business owners and the rural individuals. But they have also brought in their appeal to include the suburban and middle-class families. Conservatives have implemented policies aimed at deregulation, privatization, and reducing the size of the state and its role in the economy. They're basically looking at that form of limited government here. It has a strong history of electoral success, particularly having majority in the government for the 20th and 21st centuries. They've had notable prime ministers such as Winston Churchill and Margaret Thatcher and David Cameron. These are names that are probably coming to mind more than from the last slide. So this is the House of Commons in the UK. That's Boris, in case you didn't know. He has a lot of funny pictures for some reason. And we can see the Conservative Party, while the Labour Party has over 200 seats, the Conservative Party definitely has a foothold and a majority in the House of Commons. So, yeah, very interesting. We also see some other parties like the Scottish National Party and the Liberal Democratic Party and the Green Party and the Democratic Unionist Party. Thanks so much for watching. Please like and subscribe. It's free, which means it costs $0, and it really does help me out. Leave a comment down below with any questions. I'll be happy to answer them. There's some links down below in the description with practice tests, key terms, guided notes, all that fun stuff. Head on over to the next AP Comparative video on some really cool political stuff.